Hello and welcome to our squad pod. This is the Comic Crush from Panels to Pictures movie show. I am Paul. This is Liz. We are both planning to ship ourselves off to an island to get shot to death straight after this podcast. Or maybe not. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll avert the fickle finger of Amanda Waller. Liz, welcome back. It's lovely to see you again. It feels like it's been ages. Has it been? It's been a few weeks, right?
Yeah, like 2 weeks, which is for a while for us.
Yeah. We haven't done anything in a while. Hopefully we're going to get back into like the regular rotation of the comic show any day now, or any week now, I think. We've got a bunch of stuff coming up on YouTube soon. So next week is our Aliens podcast with myself and Nikki, and then Keith will be doing the Patreon only section for that. Week after that is the Superman 2 special. That's me and Keith, with Nikki bringing up the Patreon only section, all of which you can sign on to for like £2 a month. It's just up there in the banner or down there in the description. But what we're going to talk about today is the Suicide Squad, as it's called. Not Suicide Squad 2, not Suicide Squad on holiday, but the Suicide Squad. This is the sequel come soft reboot from 2018?
2016.
God, it's been ages, like 5 years.
I think. 2016, I believe.
That's quite rare for a comic book sequel to take that long these days.
And is it really a sequel? That's,
yes. So
inherently part of the question.
Before we get into that, I'm just going to give you a quick synopsis, guys. I'm sure you know what it's about already. But the government sends the most dangerous supervillains in the world, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, King Shark, Harley Quinn, and others, to the remote, enemy-infused island of Corto Maltese. Armed with high-tech weapons, they trek through the dangerous jungle on a search-and-destroy mission with only Colonel Rick Flag on the ground to make them behave. That's kind of a loose... I mean, that is a skillfully loose description of what actually
it tells you as much as you need to know from a synopsis.
Yeah, and speaking of as much as you need to know, guys, we are going to go full spoiler as always. So if you have not seen the film, switch us off and then go watch the film and then come back. We'll tell you what the film's like as we go, but we are going to spoil it. So you have the option now to get out and don't listen to any of that, because we don't want to ruin it for you. Like the first movie we talked about before, I think. Did we reviewed podcast it that way back in?
I'm sure. Yeah, okay. I think we did review it.
I'll try and find the link for that and stick it up. But it, a massively disappointing film. Not necessarily the fault of David Ayer, who recently has been banging the drum to get his opportunity to recut the film the way he wanted. Which Warner's aren't really... I mean, I don't blame them for not wanting to do it, considering they had this coming down the pipe,
Right. I mean, obviously, there's like the power of the, Snyder Cut lot, who are like, now, all over, hashtag release the Ayer cut. And who were actually apparently like review bombing this film before it came out.
Yeah, which I find a bit, not very gracious, but I get it. I think a lot of those fans were kind of dismissed as crackpots when that sort of release the Snyder Cut movement started, and a lot of people dismissed them out of hand simply because they wanted that film, redone. And there's a certain element to that. I mean, look at all the people that want the last two Star Wars movies remade, and it's just like, look, that's no. This is a very different situation, though. I mean, right. So as we know, James Gunn was fired from Guardians 3, fired by Marvel because of some inflammatory tweets he sent many years before. I'm not going to get into the whys and wherefores of that. But he was immediately picked up by DC. Now, I don't know if you know this. He was actually given the pick of the DC catalog. He was told, what do you want to make? there's the list. You pick the characters you want to do. And he says that they were really surprised when he said, "Oh, I want to do Suicide Squad."
That's really interesting. I didn't know that, but I love it. I think that's really cool because, obviously they had a pre-existing Suicide Squad film that, they kind of probably just wanted to quietly go away.
Yeah, and I don't blame them. It's not a good movie. There's a great video online, by the way, from Floating Ideas, I believe the channel's called, where he goes into like the editing of that Suicide Squad movie and talks about why that's the biggest problem. Because I think, sorry, go on.
I mean, when that film was coming out, it was in the wake of Batman versus Superman. It was in the wake of all this, a lot of complaints from the audience about the grim and gritty nature of, BVS and,
not complaining now though, are they?
Well, no, but at the time it was, it was like a legit gripe that they were just these like grim, miserable movies. And they wanted to lighten the tone of this, which was already, had already been mostly filmed. And the test audience response to it was that they liked Harley. So it was like, okay, well, let's beef up Harley's role in it. Even though this film's mostly shot, it's basically finished. Go shoot some more scenes with Harley. And then another company was brought in to completely re-edit it, who I guess specialized in doing trailers. So really, I think it's fair to say that wasn't his original vision for that film. No. Although whether or not his original vision would have been much better is still up in the air. It's like he tends to direct some fairly dour films, David Ayer. He doesn't have the light touch, that somebody like James Gunn can bring to something like this. Even when he does go dark, there's still a lot of humor infused in it, as we'll talk about.
And I think it's important to know that Ayer is, as you said, very dark filmmaker. And I think we would have actually got a Suicide, had he been kind of allowed to do what he wanted to do, we might have got a Suicide Squad that was closer to the Ostrander Yale 80s run of comics, which is politically very dark and morally very dark. This is a step closer to that as well. However, I think this also takes from quite heavily from Rob Williams' run on the comics. I've seen him on Twitter talking about that stuff a lot, which is great. Apparently, it was a very popular run. It was a run that I missed. I don't know if you read that.
No.
I think it might have been the new 52 stuff that Rob did.
I want to say it was post 52. I think it was actually more like, within the past 2 or 3 years, really. The
Rebirth.
Yeah, I think it was Rebirth that he did. I want to say.
And apparently very well received run. Rob's a really good writer. So I just can't speak to it because I sadly just have not read it. So sorry, Rob. So I mean, right off the bat, we're in a completely different territory than the original movie in that we don't have 6 beginnings, and every character doesn't get introduced twice. They barely get introduced once, which I thought was a marvelous kind of riposte to that first film. How did you feel about the kind of speed and brevity of it going in?
I thought that, I went into this film extremely unspoiled. All I had seen was the trailers, and that's it. So really, I did not, I had no idea how this whole opening sequence was going to unfold. Which made it all the more of a joy to watch as it did. I think obviously you're just kind of thrown right into the scenario. They've already explained what the Suicide Squad is in the first film, so if you watched that, you get the gist. And Amanda Waller does it, very, very quickly, in explaining it to Savant, I believe, which is Michael Rooker's character. Who is the first character we meet at the beginning of the film. And, just explains the concept. Okay, this is, the Suicide Squad. You get 10 years off your life sentence, or how, whatever your sentence is, if the mission is successful. If you desert the mission, or if you go off mission, there is an implant in the back of your head that she, can press the button to blow your head off if you do not comply. So that's, and that's basically what this task force X, or, the Suicide Squad is.
And the explosive device in the neck is a notion, I think it comes from, I first saw it in Escape from New York. I don't know if you've seen Escape from New York, but I think it so it turns out to be a dud, like it's not real. I think it's meant to be like a thing, but here it kind of very much is.
It's a thing.
It's a thing, as we see. And of course, what was interesting about that opening was you're in a plane full of idiots, basically. You have TDK, which
the detachable kid is as we come to find out. I mean, I loved that introduction to all those characters. You've got all these like fantastic actors. You've got Nathan Fillion, Michael Rooker, Sean Gunn,
Pete Davidson, is it?
Pete Davidson, Jai Courtney, like all of these great actors. Who, it was like, oh my God, it's so cool. Like, when they announced that casting, I was like, oh my God, wow. Like, like, look at this cast. Like, how are they going to all, fit into this movie?
They ain't. And also the fantastic thing there is, if you look at those guys, they are the most annoying. They are the most useless and irritating members of the squad. And you get to see that as they go into combat. The detachable kid is particularly
awesome. Awesome. Just his arms just like going to float off, and then just like kind of lightly slap these guys in the face. Like Pete Davidson betrays
just an
them all.
Just an irritation. And betrays them all, which I loved. Because it's right away they're in they're neck deep in the crap. And the ones I really felt sorry for, of course, are Harley and Flag, because Flag's like the diehard patriot who actually believes in what he's doing, and was ready to do the mission. Harley, he's kind of grown on us from the first one, from Birds of Prey, and yet they're the ones that they're kind of, you think they're going to end up dead. I actually really like that beginning, because it sets the tone for what the Suicide Squad should be. And if you read, like particularly in Ostrander's run, I don't know if it's present in the rest of the runs, but they do take out some memorable characters, and they are willing to kind of just lop off. I mean, it's not the same as kind of sending out the big league characters and knocking them off, but they take them out, they do their fair share.
This was like, I thought this was like the perfect beginning to this film. I think, if I had to single out a thing I liked the most about this film, I want to say it's that whole opening sequence where all these characters who you think are going to play a big part in the film just get blown away, like within, I would say, 5 to 10 minutes of, of the beginning of the film. I loved it. It was a complete, flip from what I was expecting, but it perfectly, kind of sums up what this film is about. It's like, these guys are all expendable. Don't get attached. Because at any moment, these characters, whether you've grown to like them, regardless of how you feel about them, could get blown away at any moment. And that actually, that carries through right to the end of the film. Yeah.
And it's great that they kind of do that. And then, we're introduced to a new squad. Idris Elba's Bloodsport, who's not a character. And the good thing I liked about this was I hardly knew any of these characters from from comics.
They're
I was
pretty like C and D list characters.
I mean, Polka Dot Man, I was vaguely aware of because I think he started out as a Batman villain, and of course Ratcatcher 2. Now I'm very aware of Ratcatcher 1 because all the 80s detective comic stuff. He features in that. And Danielle Melchior was wonderful, I thought, in that.
Yeah, I thought that was like, what a great character.
Yeah.
And I love that it's Ratcatcher too. Like,
yeah.
I mean, that just kind of, it emphasizes how D-list she is,
And, Polka Dot Man is just another, almost entirely useless character, it seems. You've got Peacemaker, who actually is a hero in the comics. He isn't a villain. We should probably state that. I haven't read too many. Funnily enough, I have got a Peacemaker short story in, I think, Showcase 93 or Showcase 94 that I'm going to try and read if I get some time after this to kind of get some background on the character. Yeah. It's worth noting that his helmet in the in the comics is enormous.
Oh wow! Yeah, not comics accurate.
He's like an entirely like I looking at the comics back then from the 90s, it's like I had no idea. I think he's originally a Charlton character that kind of got ported over with Captain Atom and Blue Beetle and all those guys. And we have Harley, of course, still alive on the island. Bloodsport, I thought, was an interesting one. I loved Idris Elba in this. He was great. He was great.
And you know what I thought was kind of interesting about him is that, in a way, it's like almost like an upgrade or a do-over of what they tried to do with Will Smith.
Yeah.
In the first Suicide Squad movie, because the motivation is his daughter. He's kind of the, if you want to call one of them, sort of moral, or as close to moral as it's going to get, it's him. And he's the, kind of the leader. And a lot of that really echoes what they kind of tried to do with Will Smith in the first movie. But I think it's just done so much better here. And I'm not like knocking Will Smith's performance. I think that his role was just really thin in that previous film.
I think a lot of the guys were underserved by the edit and in that original movie. My personal favorite here was Nanawe. Yeah, I mean, just what a superb use of
Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, and Sylvester Stallone. Yeah, which is great because it's like now Stallone. I don't know if you've ever read interviews with Stallone, or seen interviews with him. I would always bang a drum for Sylvester Stallone because I just fucking love the guy. I think he's a really good actor. Unfortunately, he's a really good actor who doesn't often get the chance to stretch. We're a long way from Copland and Rocky and but I think when he does good roles, he does them really well.
Yeah.
He's also a very, very intelligent guy. He's a writer, he's a director. Like he has done stuff and he can do really intelligent stuff. However, what the film gives you is the
monosyllabic,
the dumb version of Sylvester Stallone. And I loved every minute that King Shark was on screen.
Oh yeah, just I mean it was great.
Superb.
Great. It was, and obviously, immediately went to my mind that it parallels is Groot.
Yeah.
Sure. It's like, if Groot had like, maybe just like a tiny bit more like, vocabulary, he'd be King Shark.
and also like I think that was something they were quite open with. They wanted to kind of a Groot type of feel. Gunn is a director who likes working with visual effects. His films are very bloody and very squashy and very kind of gungy, and he likes creatures. And I absolutely adored this. And you totally buy it. Like that's the thing. You absolutely buy it, and you kind of need. I think you almost need characters like Weasel and King Shark to be able to buy Starro, you know?
Right. You do. Yeah, I agree with that. And actually, you know, I knew Sean Gunn was going to be in the film somewhere, but I didn't it took me, you know, until I looked it up to confirm that it was Weasel. I was like, I bet it's Weasel because I don't recognize him anywhere, but like he's always in
and
James
I think
Gunn's
he has
films.
he has a no makeup blink and you'll miss it cameo, I think, in one of the prison scenes as well. He's kind of one of the background prisoners. He like King Shark. I can't remember the guy who plays King Shark physically. It's not Stallone.
I think it's
like
I want to say Steve Agee or something like that.
Yes,
I can't remember.
Yeah, Kevin Agee maybe. Maybe Steve Agee.
I don't know. I could be wrong.
Sorry for not, you know.
Yeah,
not
we'll double fact check that. Somebody can correct us.
But like I like the physicality of it and the movement and all that stuff, and I think that was played just right in terms of the kind of lumbering idiocy of it all. And then you have, you know, Peacemaker, John Cena. John Cena is not an actor that I gravitate towards.
I would say the same in previous roles. However, in this, I thought you could not have cast any better than John Cena as the Peacemaker. I honestly, you know, he had me dying at, like, you know, just like cracking up constantly through the film, like this sort of straight man, like, you know, like sort of Captain America without the morals, you know, thing going on.
What's the great quote? I love peace and I don't care how many men, women, and children I have to kill to get it. And what's really scary about that is he had children at the end, and it's just like, what? What? I really like that. I liked how savage the film got.
And I like the rivalry between him and Bloodsport.
Yeah,
you know, that's kind of a running joke through the film. Like, oh well, my bullet would, like, you know, would go straight through your bullet, which, you know, ends up paying off, you know, near the end.
Right at the end, yeah. And also, Bloodsport's an interesting character because I know nothing about him from the comics, as with a lot of these guys. Apparently, he can reach into other dimensions and pull out any weapon he wants, which, of course, for some reason, they felt that was too stupid for this movie.
I think it would be too much of. Yeah. I think it would be too convenient.
Yeah.
You know, for the sake of the film, I think they wanted to make them have to be scrappy and have to, you know, kind of, because if he's just always, you know, in possession of a weapon, I think it becomes, you know, maybe actually more, you know, difficult to get him into scrapes in the film, you know.
Sure. And I kind of totally brought within the context of the film the sort of Iron Man-esque tech of his suit, and I loved the skull helmet. I just thought that was incredible, and it gave me one of my favorite moments, which is the poor guy in the van at the checkpoint when they show up to meet Milton, and he turns around and there's just that horrible skull looking at him, and he just goes, "Are you Milton?" I like
yeah, Milton. The whole Milton thing ended up being really funny.
Yeah, and the just the incongruity of it, of him running around swearing all the time, which is it kind of is like me on any average day, which is exactly what I'm like, just looking at things going. And, you know, obviously apologize for language, folks. Oh, for fuck's sake. Everything. It's just like, I love this.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And, you know, I think we have to comment on how R-rated this movie was.
Yeah. It's not for kids.
It's not. And it's, you know, I was surprised by the level of, you know, of swearing, you know, of, obviously of violence, but yeah, I mean, you know, I thought that it would be, you know, because obviously, you know, when you look at like Guardians, for example, it's, you know, it's a Disney movie at the end of the day. You know, it's there is no like blood and guts. You kind of forget that James Gunn comes from a background of doing trauma films and horror movies. And that he actually, has this catalog that's full of like all this like kind of violent, gross out, horror.
Well, I've still never watched Slither because I've got a feeling I would just find it a bit pukey and
But he does that stuff really well. He does the sort of over the top violence that I think fits really well with a film like this.
And it's very much akin to, I found the film was very much akin to Super,
right? Which is James Gunn, yeah.
Yeah, and looking at sort of like the Polka Dot Man, you can draw a very short, very straight line from
Super
to this. So I absolutely loved it. I mean, it does get ludicrous. It does get insane. I mean, there is a giant cosmic villain at the center of it, which is Starro the Conqueror, which is a character who's kind of troubled the Justice League many a time, and
since
features
like the
in
60s. I want to say he's been around.
And he pops up in of course in Grant Morrison's JLA run, and the interesting thing about that is it is a huge kind of villain for them to face off against. If you go into the Suicide Squad comics run, especially the Ostrander Yale stuff, what they face are terrorist groups and political kind of dissidents, white supremacists. They're kind of very much low key. Task Force X. That's the other thing that got me was at one point you see Task Force X on the news, and they call it Task Force X. Like part of the whole plot of the Suicide Squad comics is that they stay secret.
Yeah, exactly.
And that no one kind of blows their cover. And in fact, one of the big plot lines that I'm just kind of finishing off now, because I've just kind of started volume 4, is the fact that someone is threatened Waller with, I'm going to expose the Suicide Squad unless you get my candidate into the White House or, get him into Congress. And it's fascinating stuff. I think there's probably room somewhere along the line for a properly kind of politically based Suicide Squad series in, TV series. But it's interesting that, again, we're facing a giant monster.
But prior to the giant monster, it is kind of what you were describing, which is, political sort of
shenanigans.
Yeah. But very thinly so. I mean, it was like, that is one thing where, if I was gonna lodge a complaint, and it's a pretty minor gripe, but if I was going to dock points for something, it is that like there was no really strong central villain. It was more of a like just a bunch of sort of generic soldiers for them to blow away in spectacular fashion throughout the film. You kind of forget what the political conflict was a lot of the time. It's very, there's even Starro as the villain, he's not really much of a villain. At the end, you find out that he was actually, captive and, was really kind of a victim of the situation himself. So there's, that would be a minor gripe of mine.
Okay.
Kind of thin on the
I get
bad guy front.
I think it's interesting because in a way, a lot of the central villain role moves to Waller.
Right. Who is like just so fantastic. I could have watched a whole movie about her. Like she's so formidable in this role. She was one of the things that I actually really loved about the first movie. The things that I really wanted them to import from the first film are the characters who they did actually bring with them, which is Harley, who I thought was fantastic in the first one. And even more fantastic here, and Waller and Rick Flag. But I like Viola Davis is just like the perfect person to.
It's interesting because Sorry, yeah, they've made her look more like the Waller of the comics here, because she's heavier, which she wasn't. I don't remember her being in. I remember her being quite sleek and in the first film. And here, like, she seems to have sort of gained weight for the role, and kind of, she looks closer to the Waller of who, he's a big heavyset woman in the
80s comics. They've since like turned her into some, little skinny woman. Which I found really annoying, to be honest. I think that was like New 52 development. And I was like, why can't we have one larger woman, in the DCU? I don't know.
My feeling was that they made her look more like Viola Davis in the original movie.
No, she's, to be honest, Viola Davis in the original movie was not skinny. She, she's not, she's never been a tiny little woman.
I think she's a great character, and it's interesting that even one element they pull over from the comics is the fact that even her staff, the people that work with her, are like, you're nuts. Like, the stuff you're asking these guys to do and what you're willing to do to get them to do it is horrible. Because she, we have the John Economos character, who from in the comics is the sort of warden of Belle Reve, the nominal warden, even though it's Waller that runs it. Apparently he's going to be popping up in the Peacemaker TV series, along with the blonde lady whose name I can't remember now. But they're going to be like the central kind of figures, along with John Cena in the Peacemaker TV show. And it's interesting to see their reaction to her, because she is,
she's like stone cold, ruthless,
There's a very interesting backstory with Waller as well. Like, if you ever, it's worth digging into, because it's in the early comics, about how she got to be the way she was, and how she kind of acquired that sort of power and stuff. And it's good stuff. I mean, I won't reveal it here, because I really love if people went out and picked up that first Suicide Squad trade that's become available, Trial by Fire. DC have kind of let the side down, I feel, with this, by not bringing out an omnibus or republishing
some
all
new
the
printing.
collections.
Yeah, because that Ostrander run is what all these guys are basing their love for the Suicide Squad on. That is it was really different to everything else that was coming out at the time, and it remains so.
I almost wonder if that would be too dark for a comic book movie, because it's grim stuff. It is really grim stuff. And as much as we can laugh at Captain Boomerang getting blown away in this version, he really is a scumbag in the comics. He's a racist, sexist pig, and he in fact constantly becomes the guy they are trying to get killed. They will constantly put him in the line of fire to try and get him bumped off, and the tragedy of it is he never does. He continues to operate, and there's some fascinating stuff there. However, I'm not sure in today's climate you could portray some of that stuff, because I think, unfortunately, today's audience would read it as a wholesale kind of buying into that character's viewpoint, which I don't believe watching a piece of art or reading a book or whatever it is. I think you can do that without kind of no one wants a racist, sexist character running around, and I think that's the whole point of that. Him in the comics is like, no one wants him there. Everyone hates him. But it is a marvelously vindictive, horrible character to watch. And, Deadshot as well. Deadshot is a very, very, very dark character in the comics. I would have loved to have seen that. However, we get this, which is the sort of not light, but lighter version. I struggle to think what my gripes about the film would be. I think that the fact that it kind of almost didn't stay a political thriller was kind of annoying for me. However, I did still love all the end stuff.
Right.
I genuinely think it was fascinating the way they kept diving into the past of these characters to give you their origins, which was an interesting move. There was I bumped into this film critic. I was introduced to a film critic yesterday. I was having coffee with a friend of mine, and he was saying that Warner's put kept saying he was like, well, who dies and who lives in the film? And they're like, oh, we're not going to tell you, but you should probably interview Daniela Melchior. And his attitude was, who's Daniela Melchior? Like why are you making me interview these people? But they wouldn't quite tell him who was going to make it through.
Right.
Like, would you watch another movie with these characters, do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I really, I think one of the things that James Gunn does really well is endear you to his characters, whether they're, inherently kind of unlikable or not. I think he always finds a way to, kind of make you like them despite whatever they are. He did it in Guardians with, Michael Rooker's character there. And all the, all the cast. I mean, the first Guardians movie, if you, remember the, really great trailer for that, it's like they're all a bunch of a-holes. And so are these characters, and you still really like them, or at least I did. I right. I mean, even Peacemaker, who turns out to like betray all of them. I'm like, still, I was still kind of like, oh, I don't want him to die, all that.
Well, we've got the series coming, so he's clearly still. I missed the sting at the end. Did you stay? Yeah. Well, because it had been I had a terrible experience watching this film. Because the cinema I went to see it, Cineworld, hello, you're rubbish. Did a terrible job of presenting the film. They left the lights on for the beginning of the movie. The sound was way lower than it would. The film was matted incorrectly into the projector, so I don't know. There were so many problems watching the movie that I just wanted to get out there in the end. So unfortunately, I only caught the first credit sting with the Weasel. But my understanding is that Peacemaker is actually alive. Yeah, not necessarily well, but he's alive. Right. Did that come as a surprise to you? Were you
well, they kind of the way the stinger kind of plays out is that they almost kind of like trick you into thinking that it's going to be Rick Flag who was rescued, but then you discover that it's actually Peacemaker. Like, they're like, oh, we can't believe he survived the damage to his heart, and and then they go to the bed and it's Peacemaker, not Rick Flag. So I mean, and speaking of which, I was bummed about Rick Flag.
Yeah,
that was that was a bummer, but and not all the characters that we spent the movie with made it through. No. And that is like very in keeping with with the expendable nature of the Suicide Squad. Yeah. So the Polka Dot Man, another great character that I was just like, oh, I am gonna be bummed to not see him in the next film that surely will come out eventually.
But I'm glad King Shark made it out.
King Shark made it out. King Shark made it out. I was surprised. I was actually kind of like, Polka Dot Man. I kind of thought he was, he felt like his head was going to be on the chopping block. But Rick Flag, I was actually pretty surprised that they, that he is out of the picture.
Me too. I mean, I was shocked that they did a film where someone's mummy issues become an important part of the movie. Like I was really kind of the way they carried that joke through Polka Dot Man was very surprising to me. I'm disappointed that he won't be back. David Dastmalchian, I think his name is. I can't pronounce his name properly. I'm very sorry. Is a terrific actor who's been very quietly doing these really cool, good, interesting roles for years, and in fact now writes comics. Yes, so he's had a comic out, I believe, called Count Crowley, which was quite successful from Dark Horse in late 2019, early 2020, and apparently is getting a second series. He is actually a big comic book fan by all accounts.
He was in which was he in Dark Knight Returns or
Dark Knight?
Dark Knight rather. Sorry.
Yeah.
I knew he was in one of the Nolan Batman films. I couldn't quite remember off the top of my head.
And of course, Ant-Man, where he plays.
Yeah.
You know, he like I was reading a little bit about him when he got that role. He said like literally he was down to him and his wife, and he had a child as well. So they were down to like $400. That's all the money they had left in the world, which seems, you know, if I had 400 quid right now, I'd be more than happy. But like, he was like, this is all I've got to survive on. Like, the acting's not working out. You know, he'd done the Dark Knight role, but I think it'd been a long while since he'd done a role since. And then that day you got Ant-Man.
Wow.
So he was at a super low point, and he said in that
nice.
day his agent called with the news that he got Ant-Man, and you know, that's always nice to hear. I think he's a terrific actor.
Yeah, he's like, you know, I mean, like a great character actor. He's one of those guys who, you know, you kind of recognize, but you're not sure where you know him from. You just look at him. It's like I mean, he looks a bit, you know, like physically in this, he reminded me of, you know, the Penguin from Gotham.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like the way they styled him and everything, you know. I'm sure it wasn't intentional, but
like his dialogue and the way he plays that, especially with Daniela Mature, you know, I can't think there wasn't really a cast member where I looked at them and thought, I don't like the way you're doing this. Like,
they were all great. Yeah. They gelled really well. And I think that's another thing that James Gunn excels at is like taking these kind of, you know, this band of misfits and you know, creating a really great, you know, chemistry with them.
Yeah. And the film is full of irreverence and almost unnecessary flourishes. But when you put them all together, they all work to create a whole.
Completely, yeah. I mean, and there were some weird moments too, like, you know, that like on paper shouldn't have worked, but in practice, like, you know, the that scene with Harley where all of a sudden all the blood starts becoming flowers.
Yeah, and little birds and butterflies, which you know,
which is so Harley Quinn, you know,
and also the entirely inane and almost pointless stuff of King Shark and the little suckerfish.
Yeah,
like there's 0 point to that scene, really.
Except it was really great to watch. It was like, what, you know, it was just a really lovely little moment. And then, of course, when he's in the water with them, he's like, friends, and then they all attack him.
And of course, I absolutely adored the moment at the end where he's pointing at all the bodies of the soldiers, going nom nom. He's hungry again. A man after my own heart, really. I'm always hungry.
One of my favorite moments with King Shark was fairly early into the film when he's just joined the group, and you know, they're all kind of, it's this quiet, you know, moment. It's like nighttime, and they're all going to sleep, and Ratcatcher's like, you know, just you know, like completely asleep halfway into his mouth, and you know,
it's just a wonderful kind of. It has all the right flaws to make up a good film in a way, I think. But I guess the difference is here they're manufactured flaws. So I don't think they're things that a lot of those guys came to necessarily accidentally. My understanding is that John Cena started off playing Peacemaker as, you know, a bit like Arlie Emery in Full Metal Jacket. Do you know the guy I mean? The drill sergeant. Yeah. So he started off playing it that way, and apparently they had to pull him aside and go, no, look, this guy is like a broy douchebag. That's what you've got to go for. And he kind of switched up and played it like that, which I think is, and without, I'm not making an insult to Cena here, because I don't like to insult much bigger men. He's I think that's more akin to his natural kind of personality. Like, he is a bit of a, he's a bit of a bro, you know.
Right. I never watched an interview with him. I have no idea what he's like as a person.
He seems like a lovely guy. I'm not.
The role,
like
I think where he kind of just had that perfect, balance of everything needed to make that character what he was.
And Idris Elba was marvelous. Like, I absolutely loved his disgruntled kind of, because it's, he's a 50-year-old man having to put up with a bunch of idiots, and and they are a bunch of idiots and weirdos, and he just can't stand the fact that this is where he is. Obviously, we do have to give mention to Peter Capaldi as well as the Thinker.
Oh yeah, yep.
I think he did his role wonderfully. Like, his kind of morbid curiosity about everything was kind of really great.
There's just so many great actors in this film. Like, as the more we talk about it, I'm like, oh yeah, and yeah, it's like like the cast was just like really, really terrific, like top notch.
And in fact,
Capaldi's great.
Yeah, like and like the Polka Dot Man, he's having to walk around the film with these ridiculous things glued to his head, and of course the kind of dictator, El Presidente, is kind of usually the sort of sex pot guy that your wife has an affair with in a lot of other movies. I can't remember his name now, the actor, but he's done a lot of those sort of movies where he's the other man, and of course,
this is the guy who proposes to Harley,
which again was great, and the whole red flag thing was wonderful.
Was great.
Yeah.
I love that. Like because it references things that we know about her, but you don't need to have seen Birds of Prey or the first Suicide Squad movie to get what's going on.
And you do kind of get that sense that being with Cassie Kane might have actually influenced that decision. Do you know what I mean? Like, where she's very kind of, actually, you talking about murdering children is not right. Going to kind of roll with me. And in fact, the guy, the general, the sort of evil general is, I think, the guy from the James Bond movie Quantum of Solace, where he also plays the evil South American general. So
I've still never seen Quantum of Solace, so
but yeah, like it just a terrific movie. I'm not sure if I've got any real gripes,
Yeah, I've already told you my minor one, and it's pretty minor. I think for me, like, this has got to be now in my ranking of DC films, probably got to be number one in terms of, like, the DCEU onward.
Yeah.
Obviously not counting the Nolan Batman films. I'm talking sort of Man of Steel onward.
Of course, Liz. Let's not go crazy.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, we're not going to go there, but I think it just was everything it needed to be. I think, and I loved that they just kind of went there all the time, like, places that I didn't think they would go. I think it's really smart that they now have this franchise where they can do like what Deadpool did so successfully, probably right around the same time.
Sure.
I think the first Deadpool was like, probably right around 2015, 2016. And it's like that kind of came out of nowhere in terms of being able to do things that, like, the proper Marvel Disney couldn't do and the DCEU at the time wouldn't do. So where, just the irreverent, over the top violence, like, where we see King Shark literally rip a guy in half and, just blood and viscera everywhere and that sort of thing. Like, but also with a sense of humor and a sense of tongue in cheek. And so I think it's really smart that now DC have, kind of an equivalent to that. That's, that kind of, is violent, but isn't in a nasty way, really.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're going to get now from DC, they're going to have their sort of comedy strand, which will be Harley, Shazam, that, Suicide Squad, that sort of stuff. And I think that what's going to happen is there'll also be the serious strand, which will be, the Batman, Wonder Woman. Although I think Wonder Woman 84 trod both kind of quite well. Did you get to see that in the end? I don't think we ever talked about it. Yeah. Because Nikki had some very particular feelings on Wonder Woman 84.
So, well, maybe I'll watch you guys' pod on it, which I didn't do at the time because I hadn't seen the film yet. But I'd be curious to see what her thoughts were, But yeah,
I think the movies are getting better. I think, like Marvel, or in fact, they did it slightly ahead of Marvel. What they're trying to embrace is the multiversal nature of comics. Which is another subject for us to kind of discuss at some point. I really want to do an article on this for the website because I think there's a lot to be mined and talked about there. And I think they're going to just move in whatever direction they want to move in.
That is the thing with like DC, the DC movies, because they kind of flopped in the shared universe department. Kind of at least with their Justice League, their attempts at a Justice League film when it was actually coming out, and Dawn of Justice and all that. I think in a way it's freed them up because they are not adhering to kind of the shared universe concept in the same way as Marvel do. Yeah. So in a way, it's like they've got a bit more freedom and a bit more room to just try different things, whereas Marvel have a feel and a formula that they kind of have to adhere to some degree or other. And
we've got the Flashpoint. I guess it's Flashpoint that's going to be out soon. Like it's filming now. There's been plenty of behind the scenes stuff on that. We've seen the Bat Bike, which looks like a tank on two wheels. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of these shots.
Some of them
herring around London and things, or wherever it is they're filming. I know they're filming in the UK, but so I'll be curious to see if, by all accounts, that's going to be Michael Keaton. I don't know. I mean,
interesting times ahead,
Yeah.
It's like I always want the DC movies to be good, and sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't. But this movie I thought was very good. I really liked it. I think it was just what was needed. For
very, very much. But of course, what I don't want to see now is a bunch of movies that are always course correcting, because you want it to kind of settle into just good films. Worth noting that out right now for Suicide Squad fans is the DC Black Label Suicide Squad Get Joker comic. Issue 1 is out now. I'm hoping to get a review done for that on the site as soon as I've read it. I haven't had time to read it yet. I picked it up though. I love the Black Label stuff. And of course, pick up Suicide Squad Trial by Fire if you can. That is well worth reading. If you can track down the rest of the volumes, there are, I've got them on the shelf here. There are 7 more volumes after that. Do track those down. Again, I'll try and get an article done on the site about those because there's some fascinating, dark, interesting stuff. Liz, anything else to add to this?
Just what a joy it was to watch. I look forward to watching it again. Because it was so much fun. I feel like I could walk. I almost could have walked out and then watched it again right away. I always want to root for James Gunn. I feel like all that whole saga, obviously wound up being kind of a blessing in disguise because if Marvel hadn't fired him, we wouldn't have this movie.
Yeah.
And he's sort of gotten to have his cake and eat it too. Because we now know we're gonna get a Guardians 3. They've been he's been rehired by Marvel, and so he seems to kind of be one of the people to actually manage to come out of one of these sort of scandals, if you want to call it that, unscathed. And I think that's great because I really like his films. I really like him as a writer and a director. Fun fact, did you know that back at Marvel, he had wanted to do, before this, Suicide Squad came around, he had been sort of pitching to do a Thunderbolts movie.
Really?
The Thunderbolts being kind of an equivalent in a way to the Suicide Squad, group of bad guys, which it sounds like, is probably coming to fruition at Marvel, but James Gunn has now said, "Oh, well, I've scratched that itch."
Yeah,
with Suicide Squad, so it's not going to be him.
Personally, I don't think we'll see another James Gunn Marvel movie after Guardians 3 and the holiday special. I think that's going to be it. I think probably the experience that he went through is, probably done for him. And now I would hope that what he's going to do is cash in some of his chips on something that he wants to do. It'll be interesting to see what that is.
Totally.
So I mean, I'm sure he wants to do all these films, but I mean, something that he, maybe a passion project or
right. He he always writes his own scripts, and he likes doing weird stuff. We know, things like Slither, things like Super. It's like, I think he's now got the cachet to go do whatever he wants.
Yeah, totally. My final thoughts on the movie are that I think ultimately it is a film about the idea of rehabilitation versus punishment, which I know is quite a weighty theme to put in a film. I think it's there though. I think it's definitely in the bones of the film. I think, there are lots of ways to tackle that. They could have tackled it more seriously. Luckily, they didn't. I think if it had been a more serious film, we wouldn't have enjoyed the experience as much. I think there is room for serious comic book movies, and that is to say things that tackle weighty adult themes. You've seen it in Nolan's Dark Knight films, and tackle them in I don't know how to describe it, a fun, interesting manner, but I don't know, can you get that much irreverence in if you're tackling certain themes? I think James Gunn kind of can, and he's done really well with that. So it's all open from here, so we'll see where it goes. It's theirs to cock up. They'll probably cock it up. It does seem. I think Marvel are very good at playing the long game and planning out 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years ahead, which they seem to be doing here. So, fascinated to see what's next. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Liz, thank you so much for coming back this week and doing this. It's always fun to talk about these movies. I'm glad we could talk about something from DC for a change.
I know, yeah.
All we talk about is Marvel.
I know. Yeah, it has really been a while since we did it, and I think that we can hopefully open the door up to some of the other adaptations. Neither DC nor Marvel.
Yeah, absolutely
coming along the pike. So
guys, if there's anything you want us to tackle, hit us up in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Got some comments about this, about the show, about our views on the show. Want to tell us your views on the show? I would love to hear from you. Please put your comments in the box below, and we will reply to everything. I promise you we'll get back to you. Thanks very much for watching this. Do check out the Patreon and the web store. There's some great stuff, great DC comics at the moment in the web store. We'll catch you next time on The Crush. Goodbye.
Bye.